Hello, and thank you for watching this new video. Today we're going to talk about conversations with strangers. I'm going to give you two examples. One example is in a restaurant and the other example is asking for directions. Now in both of these situations you will need to have a slightly longer conversation with a stranger. In a previous video we talked about the importance of the words please, thank you and sorry. Those words absolutely need to be used in this conversation, but other things also need to be used in this conversation. Many Korean students will know and understand a lot of this language, but sometimes through embarrassment or sometimes because they haven't actually used it, they won't use this language as naturally as a British person would, or they will underuse the language. I have been in a situation where Korean students are aware that they need to say the words please, thank you, sorry, excuse me. They know that they should say these words quite a lot, but they feel like they're overusing them and they kind of feel embarrassed about using them. In the UK, it's virtually impossible to overuse these words. You could use these words in every sentence and people would just think you were very polite. They wouldn't be patronised, they wouldn't think it was silly, they would just quite like it. So when you're ordering in a restaurant, once you've got their attention and you've used the word excuse me, then you will use a lot of extra language. Now the extra language in English is what we call meta language. So rather than saying, I want the lasagna, give me the lasagna, grammatically that's fine, but it's not very polite. So what you would say is, could I have the lasagna please? And what would you like? So I'm using words like could, would, and this is extra language, just makes it more polite, meta language. So maybe a natural reaction in a restaurant would be, let's say you arrive early, you have a table booked for 8 o'clock, you would walk in and somebody would greet you very soon as you came through the door, and you would say, oh, I'm sorry, we're early, but we have a table booked for 8 o'clock. If it's not too much trouble, can we sit now? At that point, the waiter would say, oh, absolutely, yes, yeah, but please. And he would take you to the table. Or if there was no table available, he would escort you to somewhere where you could wait comfortably. At that point, when the waiter comes over, the first thing he's going to ask is, would you like some drinks? So again, the waiter would say, would you like some drinks? He's not going to just approach and say, drinks. He's going to say, would you like some drinks? At that point, you would say, oh, yes, please. I would like a pint of beer, and what would you like? Oh, I'd like a glass of red wine, please. That's the politest way of saying it. Another example would be when the meal actually arrives. In the UK, everybody will say, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, when their meal is put in front of them. Some Korean students can feel uncomfortable and think that the word thank you is being overused in this situation, but it's not. It's just a natural way of using the word in English. Okay, and then when you pay, there's a lot of please and thank yous again when you pay. So you could say, could we have the bill please? They will bring the bill to your table. Once you've paid, you leave the money on the table. Maybe they'll go away, come back with some change, say, thank you very much, thank you, bye-bye, and then you leave. And it's all very polite. Please, thank you, sorry, excuse me, would you, could you, etc, etc. Another example is, let's say, you stop somebody in the street and you ask them for directions. Again, this is somebody that you don't know. You are eating into their personal time. So you have to be polite when you try to get their attention. So at the same time, you still need to be relatively quick because it's somebody that you don't know. So the first thing you would need to say is, excuse me, could I ask you some directions, please? Could I ask you some directions? A very polite way of saying it. At that point, they'll say, sure, no problem. And you could say, could you tell me where the train station is, please? And they would say, yeah, it's just up here on the right or on the left. They will tell you where it is. After you finish, you say, oh, thank you very much. Again, polite language. Could you, would you, please, thank you, excuse me, etc. All of this is quite important in the UK. If you are a beginner, this is something you don't really need to worry about. But if you are a more advanced user of English, this is very important. I have seen students in the past who could speak English very well and they had great grammar. They didn't use this language when they were in the UK or when they were in Australia or when they were in, let's say, New Zealand. And in those countries, this language is very important. So when they were in a restaurant, they would just say, water. But they didn't say, water, please. It instantly made the waiter not really like them as much. So very important to use the language please, thank you, sorry, excuse me, could you, would you. All of this is very important. Okay, thank you.